Who was Socrates? Socrates, plain and simple, is the father of Western philosophy. As a matter of fact, philosophy as a study is divided into pre-Socratic, Socratic, and post-Socratic time periods. But who was Socrates the man? When and where did he live? And what did he do during his lifetime? I'm Generalized, and this is Historicity, a channel in which we keep a record of the constant call time, the good and the bad, in hopes of learning not to repeat the mistakes of the past. His ideas laid the groundwork for what is considered today Western philosophy. Even though by the time Socrates came into the picture, philosophy, the idea that a person could be and could devote his life to being a lover of wisdom, had already been around for 100 years. Since Socrates did not write anything down, historians have had to rely on secondary sources in order for them to get a glimpse of the man and reconstruct events that took place during his life. This reliance on secondary sources and their sometimes contradictory nature is what is sometimes referred to as the Socratic problem or the Socratic question. The two most celebrated writers on Socrates' life are the great Greek philosopher Plato, one of Socrates' own pupils, and his contemporary Xenophon. Other sources which have added some color and some celebrated quotes to the narrative of his life include Diogenes, Aristophanes, Aristotle, and Plutarch. But out of all of them, only Xenophon and Aristophanes were writing during the same time period. And when it comes to Aristophanes, he actually does so in a fictional play, The Cloud. And we know it is him because he portrays Socrates as the principal of a thinking school and describes him in ways that fit all the proper and later descriptions of the philosopher by later writers. Historically, we can't be certain, we cannot know beyond a reasonable doubt that the events described in the Socratic dialogues, the main source on Socrates' life by Plato, are entirely true. You see, in Greek antiquity, most writings were either dramatic or philosophic texts, but there was no contemporary history. Before Socrates, there were no historians. Herodotus, the father of history, was writing his book titled Histories during Socrates' life. And Xenophon and Thucydides were experimenting for the first time ever with writing about contemporary events. So what we often get from our good-intentioned sources, while noble and well-meaning, could possibly be tainted with the writer's own perceptions, fabrications, and opinions of events rather than those of the real Socrates. And that, my friends, is the Socratic problem. What we can gather from these sources about his early life is that he was born in the year 470 or 469 BCE in Alopiki, a small village located about 20 minutes outside of Athens and belonging to the tribe Antiochus created by Cleisthenes. His father, a man by the name of Sophronicus, was a sculptor and stonemason, and his mother, Phrinarete, is believed to have been a midwife. Now, the time period in which he was born was a period of great economic prosperity in Athens, especially for someone who was making a living as a sculptor. This was the Athens of Pericles, an Athens in which all the money of the Peloponnesian world, the Delian League, was basically being stored in Athens and being used, more properly appropriated by Pericles to build the Athenian Acropolis. So we can say with certain accuracy that his father was definitely employed throughout those years. It is actually believed that his father, and even Socrates himself, took part in the building of the Acropolis and the Parthenon itself. As a matter of fact, it is believed that having learned the craft from his father, Socrates became so good at it that he worked on a statue called the Graces or Charistes, which was displayed in the entrance to the Acropolis. Pausanias, a geographer in the 2nd century, actually states in his work the description of Greece, describing the charistes or graces of antiquity. Socrates too, son of Sophronicus, made images of graces for the Athenians, which are before the entrance to the Acropolis. Let's stop there for a second. So we can point out the fact that if Pausanias is writing in the 2nd century AD and Socrates lived around the year 430 BCE, that actually means that his work, the physical work that he created, work that he created with his hands, survived and was displayed in Athens for 600 years. Pausanias continues, Socrates was known to have destroyed his own work as he progressed deeper into his life of philosophy and search of the conscious, due to his iconoclastic attitude towards art and the like, which rather fits the character of Plato's Socrates in the Socratic dialogues. As a young man, Socrates was the pupil of 2 women who deeply influenced him besides his mother. The first one, Diotima, he credits in Plato's Symposium to have taught him all he knew about love. And the second, and the most important one, Aspasia, who happened to be the lover and eventual wife or mistress of Pericles, he credited with having taught him the art of rhetoric. This Pericles mentioned with Aspasia, her partner, her lover, her husband, is the same Greek strategos that was in charge of Athens, who was also one of the first individuals in ancient Athens to be taught by sophists or teachers of wisdom, in his case, Protagoras and Anaxagoras. And it is in the writings of these 2 philosophers, Protagoras and Anaxagoras, mixed in with the rhetoric of Aspasia, that Socrates finds the foundation for his life, philosophy. Then, still a teenager, he went on and studied under the philosopher Archelaus, math, astronomy, and learned about the works of even earlier philosophers that came before him. According to Diogenes in the 3rd century, Archelaus engaged in a sexual relationship with Socrates, a practice that was commonplace in ancient Greece between mentor and mentee, and had probably been so for hundreds of years, and something which, as you'll later see, would mark Socrates' life till the very end. At the age of 38, around the year 432 BCE, it is said that Socrates became a hoplite, or Greek infantry soldier, and fought in the Second Peloponnesian War, which officially lasted from 431 BCE till 404 BCE and ended in the defeat of Athens at the hands of Sparta. According to Plato's Symposium, it is said that in this war he saved the life of someone who would eventually become his pupil, Alcibiades, at the Battle of Potidæa against Corinth, something which he would do again at the Battle of Delium in 424 BCE. It is clear that at the same time he served in Athens' military, he would also continue with his philosophical teachings. For a year later, in 423 BCE, Aristophanes would write that famous play already mentioned, The Cloud, and would describe Socrates as a 47-year-old clown, petty thief, and a fraud who walked around the city of Athens barefooted and in rags while looking down his nose at the ignorant masses. Now, it must be pointed out that Aristophanes was writing satirical comedies, which means that his portrayal of the philosopher, while rooted in reality, must have definitely been exaggerated. As a matter of fact, Socrates himself didn't have a problem with being characterized that way. Plutarch even goes as far as stating that Socrates once said that when they break a jest upon me in the theater, I feel as if I were at a big party of good friends, which basically meant that when they made fun of him in a play, he felt as if it was all done in good fun by a group of his friends, as whether he was in on the joke as opposed to being the butt of the joke. Socrates' ideas had extreme anti-democratic tendencies, something which was extremely unpopular in Athens at the time, a place that came to be known worldwide for being the birthplace of democracy. He famously said that virtue is something that is attained only by knowledge, and knowledge is beyond the scope of the everyday person. In other words, good values are only attained through learning, and the people, everyday people, are too stupid to learn. Charming, wasn't he? He was often dismissive, arrogant, and right down condescending. As a matter of fact, Diogenes says that men, other people, set upon him with their fists and tore his hair out, which means that he got beaten up a lot for his ideas. And while people might hold Socrates' musings to be harmless in the political arena, his anti-democratic tendencies might have actually powered 2 attempts to overthrow democracy in Athens during his lifetime. The first, the Athenian coup of the 400 that took place in 411 BCE and was sponsored by none other than Alcibiades. Yes, that Alcibiades, Socrates' own pupil, whose life he had saved not only once but twice. This attempt would only succeed in holding on to power for 4 months, and then it would crumble upon its own weight. The second time, in 404 BCE, during the pro-Spartan period that came to be known as the period of the 30 tyrants, a coup that was led by Critias, another pupil of Socrates, who was also related to Plato, the writer of the Socratic dialogues. Now, while not directly tied to the coups themselves, the perpetrators might have definitely been influenced by his teachings. In 403 BCE, the rule of the 30 tyrants came to an end, and the rule of democracy was restored back to Athens. Since he wasn't directly involved in any of these attempts, Socrates did not lose his life, he did not flee, and he did not have to face any other consequences. However, he continued being a gadfly on Athens' back. He continued spreading his anti-democratic ideas in favor of a strong rule by a strong and wise ruler, the famous philosopher-king theory. And then in 401 BCE, there's yet another attempt to overthrow democracy in Athens, again led by the followers of Critias. This wasn't so much a new coup as a rekindling of the old one. You see, the followers of Critias were members of the aristocracy who, under the Treaty of Peace signed in 403 BCE after the fall of the 30 tyrants, had moved to a town of Eleusis outside of Athens. They had actually taken the town by force, killing 300 male citizens. Well, they lived there for 2 years in peace, but in 401 BCE, they hired mercenaries to take over Athens again. The Athenians were not having it this time around, so they marched in there with their full force and neutralized the threat once and for all. Now, and here's the kicker, in Athens, people were already saying that the youth who had led these rebellions had been Socratized or brainwashed by Socrates and his teachings. In other words, the people of Athens were starting to see Socrates as a clear and present danger to Athenian democracy. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and click the bell so that every time there's a new video, you can be immediately informed. Also, come on, subscribe if you haven't already. I'm Generalized, and this is history.